Well, hey there, friend, and welcome back for another episode of the Your.Hair.Mentor podcast, where I'm your host and your hair mentor, Crystal Green. And I invite you to come take a listen to the top leaders and thinkers and experts and innovators in the beauty industry as they share their stories of triumph and struggles and success in creating their businesses behind the chair. I hope you enjoy these episodes just as much as I did recording them. See you on the inside, friend.
All right, guys, I am so excited to be here today. So my name is Kristen. I have the podcast In-Demand Hairstylist. I am also a salon industry coach. I started in the industry 20 years ago, probably where many of you have been before too. I started out as an assistant, worked at a commission-based salon for several years before hopping into a corporate salon. And I did the whole corporate salon for probably about 3 more years before jumping into salon ownership. And the reason I did salon ownership is because I really just wanted freedom and flexibility in my schedule. Jumped into salon ownership and quickly found out that it was the complete opposite. However, I absolutely loved what I was doing. So I spent about 14 years building, growing, scaling my salon. I had a team of 13 stylists. I was a commission-based salon, and I built, grew, and scaled that salon and just sold it in 2021 to one of my longtime stylists, and she's doing amazing and thriving and continuing to build that salon to a 7-figure salon. So it's been an amazing journey, and so now what I do is I really help salon owners build and scale their business without the burnout. So I work on a lot of creating systems and structures within the business, team building, building a team, and then going through and really working on time management and leadership. So that's what I'm up to these days. So I'm excited to be here and dive into questions. Tell us a little bit about you, Kristen.
Yeah. Thank you for that little tidbit. I learned some things about you just now. It's quite the elevator pitch, too. I'm like, oh, girl, I am not that organized. So my name is Crystal Green, and I'm the owner and founder of Your.Hair.Mentor, which is online education and now the podcast, which I kind of fell into, but have grown to love and enjoy so much. Mostly I end up talking to individual stylists. I've been an individual entrepreneur my entire career. I've never owned a salon. I started as an employee in the salon and then jumped straight into booth rental. And then from there, I've had a salon suite and now I have a studio. And so really I speak to the individual stylist and helping them. And most recently, I realized that most of my audience is like either in beauty school, fresh out of beauty school, up until maybe the 5-year stylist. Because I feel like a lot of the information that I give and share is like how to build a clientele, how to keep a clientele, how to be professional behind the chair, and like those soft skills that we need in order to build a thriving business as an individual. And so I have a podcast called Your.Hair.Mentor podcast, and it has mostly turned into me having very interesting conversations with industry leaders and like-minded individuals like you. And I love it and would love to dive in even more and let that be the driver of my career. And I never thought that would be the case. So I'm happy to be here today to share some questions that we have fielded from our audiences. So want to just dive in on that?
Let's go. I love it. Yes,
Sweet.
let's dive in.
Okay, so the first one has to do with like how we became podcasters and like the transition from being a hairstylist to podcasting. And so let's just kind of discuss, I guess, our personal journeys of like how we landed on being podcasters. And then the shift from like hairstylist to full-time educator even, and what that looks like for you and me. It's weird. I'm like asking you a question, but I'm asking myself too at the same time.
Yeah, I love it.
This is funny because we're like both fielding questions here. And then what was the motivation to make this transition, and what challenges did we face along the way? So do you want me to just go ahead and do this one first? Okay. Yeah. It's going to be like a multifaceted kind of thing, right? So for me, like I didn't aspire to be a podcaster. I wasn't like hoping this would turn into anything. The biggest thing for me is I was trying to get my online business out there with like SEO stuff. And so, you read like you need stuff on your website to draw people in. So that would be like blogs. Okay, cool, I can do blogs. Turns out I hate doing blogs. I am so finicky about writing that I would like take like 2 or 3 days to feel like it was done enough to put it out there.
Mhm.
And so it was just this like slog fest every time I went to go write a blog. And I got to the point where I'm like, God, I like talking. I can talk way easier than I can write. And so I started the podcast just as a way to like direct people away from my website. Like, hey, if you liked my blogs, you're going to like this because I'm basically saying what I was going to say in a blog, but in word form, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't think it would turn into anything. I was just like, this is just something for me that works. It's the way I can put content out there, and I would just have a link to it in my website. And I didn't think it would get promoted anywhere or do anything. And then I've slowly had people kind of reach out to me and ask to be guests on the podcast and say yes to me asking them. And it just kind of flourished from there. And so I think the challenges that I've faced in the meantime have mostly been technical,
Mhm.
because I was like, okay, I want to do a podcast. How do I do this? For anyone listening, starting a podcast is not that difficult. I'm sure as you found out, you need an account with some sort of provider, right? I use Anchor for mine. I don't know. Who do you use, Kristen?
Libsyn.
Okay. So you like
Yeah.
create an account and then basically just upload the audio content on there. And so it's like pretty simple, but the hard part is understanding like your technical equipment and like how to speak into stuff so that you don't sound like you're doing the like, popping and snapping and all the things that make
Yeah.
things difficult to listen to. And then like the actual editing. So all that stuff was just, a little bit hurdly to get over, but there's YouTube videos for everything, trial and
Mhm.
error. So I'd say that was my biggest hurdle getting into
Yeah.
this space. Other than that, talking came very naturally.
I was going to ask you, like, I don't know about for you, but at first, like, did it take you a minute to get used to talking to nobody? Like, now I do it very naturally, but like at first I remember just being like, this is challenging because as hairstylists, we're used to talking to a client, talking to our team, like people in the salon, and then all of a sudden you're talking to like nobody.
Yeah, right. You're not getting any sort of feedback from people.
Right.
It wasn't hard for me, but that's because I was on the tail end of making these online courses that I had just gone through. That
Right.
was way more difficult because not only was I doing audio talking to myself, but video talking to myself. And I
Mhm.
like to think I was like Anchorman, where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I have like so many blooper reels because I'm just like, shorting out, like short circuiting. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why did I make that face? What am I talking about?
Yeah.
So I went through that whole evolution already, just making video content. So for me, transitioning from video content to just audio was so
Mhm.
easy. Like, I was like, I got this, no
Yeah.
problem.
I love it.
And then I don't know about you, but especially if I'm doing a solo podcast, I usually don't go through and like edit my audio. If I fumble on my words, even if I'm halfway through, I will delete the entire thing and just start over. I just
Yeah.
am like, it has to be natural. And if I'm like not doing something well, I'll just be like, I'll try again.
Drop it. Yeah. I used to do that. And so like I've learned a lot through podcasting. So my story is very similar to yours. Definitely did not set out to be like a podcaster at all. For me, it was like I was stepping out from behind the chair more to focus on running my business. And to be completely transparent, like the day-to-day in and out of running a business and managing a team was not lighting me up. Like at that time, it was not the thing that I was passionate about, like doing hair behind the chairs. Like I'm passionate and I love it. So I created a podcast sort of as like that creative outlet for me, like to continue like talking and being creative and being connected in the industry. And then it just again evolved and stuff, just like you. But where was I going with that? We were talking about something before.
Recording, how I will just
Oh,
like delete the whole thing.
so what I was going to say is that what's so cool is like I've learned a lot of things along the way that I think translate back into the industry. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but at the beginning, like my very first podcast episode is called Just Get Started, because it was so like I recorded, then deleted, recorded, then deleted, recorded till then deleted until I finally just got that first episode out. And then in the earlier episodes, probably like the first 20 or so episodes, like I would record and then do a ton of editing. And then I just got to the point where I was like, screw it. Like, I'm not gonna, like, if I'm human, I'm gonna fumble, I'm gonna mess up my words, and like, I'm not gonna spend 4 hours editing. Like, this is what it is. And so it's really helped me with perfectionism, like overcoming perfectionism, which totally relates to the industry. Like, if you don't have a podcast, but you're a stylist behind the chair, like perfectionism will totally hold you back. And so that's one big lesson I learned from podcasting now, is just that authenticity, being transparent, and then like done is better than perfect. So like just take the action, do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one is analyzing your work as much as you are. So that was a huge takeaway too.
That's so true. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially like to relate it back to hairstylist behind the chair. Like I am my worst critic when it comes to hair, right? I'll be like focused on this little like nano section on someone's head and they don't
Mm-hmm.
care. They don't notice. And I have had to finally be like, do you even see what I'm doing here? Like, do you care? And my client be like, nope, I think it looks great. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just stop.
Yes, but it's also probably what makes you a great hairstylist. So there is that fine line. Like I think perfectionism, gets us to the point of being super successful, but it also can hold you back too and
Right.
waste a lot of time. Like your client definitely is not focusing on the nano section of hair. Like they feel amazing.
Yes. Yes.
So let's go ahead. I'll dive in and share one of my questions that came through. So um, so this question was really, it was about sharing expertise and educating hairstylists. So how do you approach educating other hairstylists through your podcast? So like, what are key topics and skills that you focus on? Like, what should you be talking, what do you talk about on your podcast, and how do you ensure the content's like engaging and valuable? How do you know what kinds of things to talk about on the podcast?
Mm, yeah. You want me to go ahead and answer that one first?
Yeah, yeah, go
Cool.
ahead.
Why not? It feels more natural, I guess, if you pose the question and then I answer it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think for me, like the obvious indicator is like downloads, right? If you put a episode out there that's like way more popular than others, you're like, oh, okay, people really care about that stuff. But also, I try to post about what my podcasts are about on social media too, and I've taken polls and things like that. And it seems like the things that resonate the most are like hair loss topics are really, really popular for everyone. Like hairstylists want to know about it because they want to serve their clientele more. Clients want to know about it because they're experiencing the hair loss and they don't understand. And then I think that like just subtle like client relationship topics are really popular too. So I guess for me, in order to answer that question, it's like just trying to pull my audience and understand what they need from me in that regard. I know that Anchor or Spotify has like polls as an option that you can put into the bottom of the episodes. And I've done that and no one has ever responded on those. I think they just don't see them. I never notice them when I'm listening to podcasts. Or usually what I do is I find a podcast episode, I push play, and then my phone is like off and set down somewhere. So I'm not like scrolling through to the bottom with all the show notes and everything. So I think in my experience, that's a little bit of a lost cause. And then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for me at this point is just, well, actually, no, I'm going to back up and say one other thing is in-person stuff, right?
Mhm.
Because I'd like to think the same audience I'm trying to serve in person is the same audience I'm trying to serve in my podcast as well. And so I get feedback from in-person coaching and the things that they're looking for, which sometimes surprises me. And I'm like, oh, I kind of forget that someone that's only 1 to 5 years in might not know those things, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
How about
Yeah.
you?
Same. I mean, I feel like a lot of it, like, it's interesting. I think it's like if you're thinking about starting a podcast or it's something that you would want to do, I think really knowing that target audience, just like you would do behind the chair, like figuring out who your ideal client is like who's your target audience and who are you talking to? And again, I really honestly like Mine's called In-Demand Hairstylist. I didn't even love the name of it. It's just like what I came up with and I kind of rolled with it. And I started off talking about more personal development things and kind of yeah, I would say more like emotional personal development things at the beginning because I was going through such a big transition. So for me, it was kind of like this online diary. That's how it started. And it's evolved into something completely different now. So that also was a huge lesson. Is like, it's don't be attached to like your podcast and how it has to be and that it can't evolve at some point because mine has completely changed. At the very beginning, yeah, I kind of used it, like I said, as an online diary. So I talked about the things that I wanted to talk about, honestly. It was a way for me to get out sort of what I was feeling about the transition that I was going through. But then it started to really evolve. Like people would reach out to me. And that's really rewarding about having a podcast is like, it's not just, you don't have impact just behind your chair anymore. And this small space, like this podcast is literally going out into the world. And so I have people who will reach out to me from, London or Canada or Mexico. Like I have clients that, I have a client who's in Brussels and in Belgium. So it's really, really cool. Like that has been the most fun thing for me. And then, as you evolve, like people do, they reach out to you, they ask you questions. Polls have been super helpful. And then also I have a private Facebook group, private Facebook community where, I'll run polls and ask questions in there. But a lot of it is just like hearing the questions that come up or the complaints that people have or the challenges that they're going through. And so, my ideal client at this point is very different than if you're a stylist wanting to join. Like, are you teaching stylists or are you teaching potential clients? Like, you need to really know, like, are you going to be talking about hair stuff and how to manage and style your hair? Or are you going to be talking to the stylist, teaching them how to grow their business or doing whatever? So I think just knowing that target audience and then allowing yourself the freedom to know that it will evolve,
Yeah.
and just kind of going with the flow on that.
That's interesting that you bring that up because when I started Your.Hair.Mentor, my original idea was to help enable clients to be satisfied in their hairstylist chair. And so I was geared towards helping them maintain, manage, and style their hair at home with the online courses. And then I was helping give them confidence to speak to their hairstylist. And I was hyper focused on that. But I was getting feedback from hairstylists. I was getting hairstylists that would follow me on social media and hairstylists that would follow my podcast. And I was like, huh, interesting. And then finally I had an interaction with a friend of mine that was, she jokes around that she's like my muse when it comes to this stuff because she has the worst luck, I swear, with hairstylists. She just is probably not the best communicator and she's a very emotional client. And so I'm always like coaching her to help say the things she needs to say to get what she wants. But she'd gone to a client, or I'm sorry, a hairstylist, and she's like, gosh darn it, Crystal, like I don't have time to like be learning all these things just to know how to talk to my hairstylist. I want my hairstylist to just figure it out and talk to me. And so then I'm like, you know what? I think the universe is trying to tell me that I need to speak to hairstylists. And so having that moment of like pivoting and shifting in my business to where for a little while I was very much like, okay, I'm going to bridge the gap between what I would call the confused consumer and the hustling hairstylist, right? But I found more and more, I think what I'm saying resonates with hairstylists. And so understanding that it's okay to transition too. And like you kind of have to pick a market to who you're talking to, and then it resonates better.
Yeah, I love that though, because like it's not even like you were transitioning, like you're messaging from like a certain type of hairstylist to a different type of, you were transitioning from speaking to consumers to then the hairstylist, which just proves that it's okay. Like you can transition. And I actually, I loved hearing that because I mean, you had told me about that, but like hearing you explain it, like that actually makes so much sense. And sometimes you just have to get in and do it. And like, and it opens up, as you said, like the universe just sort of tells you, like by the people who are coming in and wanting the information from you. So that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, it took me a while to fully embrace it too because I was very married to the idea of like, no, I want to empower, our clients, and it's like, I still am, and
Hmm.
if I'm speaking to the stylist and I'm helping empower the stylist to then have happy clients, and the goal is still the same, more happy clients, right? So it was like just a
Hmm.
little mind shift for me to understand I can get to the same goal just with a different pathway.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
And just to
So,
end on that too, like, is you learn that it's really not about you. Like I said, I started mine out like as almost like this online diary where I was like sharing things. And I really got to the point where I learned like, yeah, even though I want to be maybe probably like talking about these things, what people are needing is something else. And so you shift. Like your podcast isn't about you really, it's about the people that you're serving. And so even if the content is redundant or maybe it like the back of your hand or whatever, there are people out there who need it. So even just like you said, like maybe you were like, really, am I teaching hairstylists? Like I was excited to talk to consumers or like the client. So I love that you listen to that nudge because you are helping so many stylists, and which in turn then helps the clients. So that's pretty cool how that worked out for you.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I was going to read my next question here, which is like, who is your target audience and who are you speaking to exactly? But we kind of just went over that already. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I think if someone's looking to, even not a podcast, if someone's looking to start like an online business of any sort, having like some idea of who you're speaking to is helpful because then it makes
Mhm.
all of your messaging different, you know?
For
Um,
sure.
I definitely went through a whole evolution with that. So we can move
Yeah,
on from there.
yeah. Target audience, it takes time and it evolves. I will
Yeah.
say that. But yeah, starting somewhere, like pick somebody,
Hmm.
pick a target audience, um, create content around that, and you'll find probably that it'll shift. Like, I don't know any online educator or podcaster that, or even podcasts that I listen to that aren't multifaceted. Like some, they start off talking about certain things, but I've seen online educators and podcasters completely evolve and shift. So, you
Right.
know, so yeah, target audience definitely changes over time, I think.
Yeah. Well, and not every episode is going to be for everyone too. Like I usually don't go in chronological order and listen to podcasts over, I listen to like, a dozen at a time or something, right? A
Mhm.
dozen different ones. And then I'll just kind of scroll through and find ones that sound interesting.
Title, right? Like the
Yeah.
title that jumps out. You're like, oh, that one,
Yeah. Gosh, and
Yeah.
even then, like, so then it puts the pressure on you to like have a catchy title, you know what I mean? To make it like, it has to be short enough so that it's not like a run-on sentence, but
Yeah.
enough to it describes what's going on in the episode. That's a whole nother ball game is like coming up
I
with
know,
those
right?
things, right? Oh,
And that's probably the challenging part. Like, it's not the podcast setting it up. Like, people are always like, oh, I would have no idea. Like you said, that's actually easy. It's like the whole, yes, tech. And then I would even say, yeah, like just naming all of the podcast episodes and stuff. Like, it just, that stuff kind of gets a little challenging, but it's nothing that you can't work through for sure.
right, right. And then I find like inspiration with other podcast shows too, and I'll look at how they format like their show notes and those kind of things and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that a little bit. I'm going to emulate that and, try that out for a while.
Mhm.
Which is this kind of leads into the next one. So I feel like, we're evolving as educators and podcasters. Something that's also evolving all the time is the hair industry in general. And
Mhm.
so one of the other questions that I had was like, how do we stay up to date with emerging trends and things that alter and shift in this industry that we're talking about and sharing about all the time? How do you stay abreast of what's happening?
Yeah, so for me, it's a little challenging, and I know that this is new for you too, is that like I actually am no longer in the salon. I sold my business. I don't work behind the chair anymore. So it's a little more challenging. Like I really have to submerge myself in conversations in different classes that are happening. I mean, thankfully, social media is out there and that everything is available. So it's just like if you were just starting out in the industry or you're a hairstylist wanting to grow, I would say like we have social media and Google at our fingertips. So I think that's really amazing. For me, that's pretty much how I'm staying submerged. I still like, first of all, I still love hair so much. So it's
Same.
fun for me to feel connected, like in that So I make sure that I still follow hairstylists. I follow successful salon owners. I follow other educators that I resonate with their messages, like yourself. And I follow people so that I know what's going on both technically and on the business side of things, so that I can be relevant, because it's just like anything else. Like the minute you start, like, kind of let yourself stop growing is the minute that you kind of die off. And so I don't want to do that, especially not being submerged physically in the industry at the moment. So that's important for me. So that's kind of pretty much what I'm doing at the moment.
I
How
would
about you?
agree. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's probably built into us, especially having worked behind the chair as long as we have. It's like we know how to look for things and trends and maybe who to look at, so that if it was a client sitting in our chair, we would know like what's the hot haircut right now, right? Is it the wolf cut or the butterfly or the like whatever they're
Yeah.
calling it?
Yeah.
The mocha whippa frappa color, we would have seen it, we would have heard about it because we know who to follow. And I think it's the exact same with the podcasting industry. I know for me, the interests have just changed a little bit. And so it's like, yes, there's hair trends to follow, but I think I'm more interested in like people doing interesting things, trends, at least on my end, like being able to talk to really cool people that are inspiring in the industry. I want to know like what new product lines are out, or what new businesses are emerging, or tools are happening, and so that then you can share that information with people that are listening to you. And I always consider it like market research when I'm looking on social media, right? My husband will be like, "Are you working?" I'm like, "No, I'm just doing market research right now. I'm just
Yeah.
scrolling, you know."
Yeah.
And I find too that like, you find your educators that you enjoy watching, and I have a handful that I'm like, these people are awesome. They're doing wonderful things. I like to look in their comment sections of their posts and see
Yeah.
hairstylists interacting with each other and having conversations in there. And then I'm like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
That
That's
was
a great idea.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how he figured out who Brad Mondo is. Do you know who that guy is?
Why do I feel like I've heard of him, but I don't
Because
want
he was everywhere for a while. He's like this TikToker that isn't licensed. I believe he's not licensed. If you're listening to this, Brad Mondo, and you're licensed, I apologize. Um, but I'm pretty sure he's not licensed. And he would just go on TikTok and like tell people how to do hair. And he would do it on doll heads. And he is kind of a disaster and would end up like destroying things. But he would teach people how to do their own haircuts and stuff like that. And so all of these like young people were super intrigued and trying to do the Brad Mondo stuff. And
to.
so I saw some hairstylists kind of bantering about that and talking about like, oh, Brad Mondo, eye roll. And so I'm like, who's Brad Mondo, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then I go figure it out from there. So I get like little nuggets with
Mhm.
conversations like that happening. That's, I
Mhm.
think, for me, the easiest way to then go Google search something. It's like it gives me a path to take, to then go follow that
Oh,
way.
I love that. Oh, okay. So I'm learning now. That's maybe something I have to do, is like dive into the comments. And this is like, I think that's great advice for, again, a hairstylist who's in the salon, who, if you have those like local Facebook groups and somebody says something about it, hey, looking for a hairstylist, like boom, go into those comments and just see what people are needing and wanting. And it's really a great way to create your service menu or marketing or whatever. But that's so cool. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so funny. You and I are the same age. So I love that. Like, as I'm getting older, I'm feeling like there's like 20-year-old hairstylists coming in. And I feel like totally when I was in my salon, like my team really kept me up to date with things. But now I'm finding like I have to follow these comments. Like, now that's a great idea to kind of just stay in the loop, because yeah, it's traveling at the speed of light. I mean, social media has like just put everything on a whole like really fast trajectory, and things change so quickly. So that's a great idea. I love it. Love it.
Totally. We got to stay
So let's
young.
dive in. This kind of like goes into sort of a question that one of my someone in my community asked, which is about the topic of community. So like building community as of hairstylists. So like for you, how important has it been, like the aspect of community building, like especially now that you have your podcast and stuff? within the podcast and in your salon, and what kinds of things have you done to like leverage that with your podcast?
Oh, it's an interesting topic for me because I feel like I just had this realization like a month ago that okay, so to back up, like when I started as a hairstylist, I knew very, very well that I needed a clientele and I needed other hairstylists to bounce ideas off of, to share clients with. You needed a community of like camaraderie, right? So I had the people I served and then the people that I leaned on. And I did a very good job of massaging that into something that worked for me. Every time I moved to a different state, I did 3 different times where I was able to find that and build that, right? So I think I have a good knack for that. And I didn't realize that stepping away from the salon, leaning into this podcasting, educator realm, I had to do it again. It was like just recently, I'm like, oh, wait, my people have shifted, right? So now the people I'm serving are the hairstylists, and the people that I need to lean on are the independent educators and the podcasters and those out there that are like entrepreneurs first and not hairstylists first in a way. And once I realized that, I feel like it was a lot easier. I was kind of struggling for a little while. I was kind of just feeling like this, like, I don't know, solo floundering, like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like doing some stuff. And I was still trying to find camaraderie with hairstylists. And it was like, this is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like they'd figure out what I'm doing. And it was almost like they like didn't know what to say to me. You know what I mean? This is still when I was working behind the chair too. Like I'd, be chatting with other hairstylists and it was like, oh, you do podcasts, or like, oh, you're an educator, and therefore we're not on the same level kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, I guess, in an office setting, if you had like your comrades and then you got like a promotion and now all of a sudden you're not in the cubicle, you're in the office. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
we can't talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
So I've had to shift my way of thinking and open up to making new friends that are doing different things, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Totally. No, completely. And I can totally resonate with that. I think for me, it was sort of like when I sold my business, and again, everybody's journey is different, but I had a lot of stress as a salon owner, having a team of 13 people, carrying that all through COVID, the year of 2020 and beyond, and then going through the sale of a business and meeting with lawyers and attorneys, and it was a lot. And so for me, when I sold, I almost like checked out for a minute. Like I was so craving freedom, flexibility, independence. I didn't want to worry about anybody else. Like those couple of years, I had to worry about everybody else. And so I wanted to just completely disconnect. So I really enjoyed my podcast and doing everything by myself until I didn't. And I think as like people in the beauty industry, we're like, and just in general, we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to do business alone. We're not meant to do life alone. And so I did start feeling incredibly isolated, disconnected, really struggling. And that's when I did start really reaching out and trying to find community. And I think to your point, like it didn't make sense for me to then go and really, yes, I love hairstylists and connecting with hairstylists, but I'm not a hairstylist behind the chair. So I needed to connect with people who were doing the same thing that I wanted and had similar goals that I had, and were kind of in a season of life that I was in or am in.
Yeah.
And that's been really huge, just kind of getting back into community has felt so good, because doing things on your own and that freedom and independence is cool for a little while until it's not. Like community is everything, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. We could even relate this back to hairstylists that have salon suites.
Yeah.
I went from working in like a big salon to having my own suite. And it was the sense of like, I can do anything, I can sell anything, I can talk about anything, this like freedom. And then after a while, I'm like, man, I kind of miss the break room. I kind
Yeah,
of
like
miss
I'm
that, like,
lonely.
yeah, exactly. Like my client doesn't want to hear about color formulation. I can't vent to my client about other clients. Well, I mean, maybe some people do, but I don't, right?
Yeah.
And so I miss that, like, that salon banter. And I think unfortunately a lot of salon suites, like I tried to kind of foster that where I was at. I was in a place that had like I think it was 20 different rooms.
Oh,
And
wow.
like 90% of us were hairstylists, right? There were other businesses in there, but I think it was 90% hairstylists. And no one was really interested. I don't know if it was like awkward for them, but I was like trying to kind of be like, hey, let's get together. Like, anyone want to go out to drinks or coffee or like
Mhm.
anything? And it was a little harder than the
Yeah.
typical like salon environment where you're like forced to work with people. And so it was a little lonely.
Yeah.
I know here in Reno, there's a young gal who I think she's only been out of beauty school like 3 years, and she started this thing called Reno Beauty Ball. And she did it because she's in a suite. And she's like, I had so much fun in beauty school. And then me and my friends all went into salon suites, and we don't work with each other. And we're all by ourselves and we're lonely. And so she created this event just for beauty pros to come and like dress up and have fun and talk.
Cool.
And I'm like, I could see that being super popular for that reason?
Mm, I love it. I want to come. I'm like across the country, but that
Yeah, yeah.
sounds
I
fun.
know, right? Well, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's in September. I can let you know.
Let me know the
Um,
dates.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's
Oh,
hard, and for humans in general, but I know like most of us are very, outgoing and people oriented. And so when you remove that, whether you're podcasting or standing in a suite, it's hard. You
yeah,
have to find your people.
definitely. I think so too, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to read the next question here that I have. It's kind of a short little paragraph here. Okay, so it's about overcoming challenges in the hairstyling industry. Someone's curious about what are some of the common challenges that hairstylists face in their careers, which we just covered some of those, and some common tips and strategies for overcoming them, and how can hairstylists navigate issues such as burnout, which I know you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
competition, love that one, or staying inspired. Ooh,
Mm.
I'll let
These
you
are
take.
all, wow, these are all so juicy. And
I
yes,
know.
definitely. Yeah. So I'll speak to salon owners that are um, also hairstylists because that's mostly those are the people that I coach and I connect with most. They're driven, high achieving hairstylists who become salon owners and end up running into things like burnout. Comparison is huge, and so um, I think one of the biggest things I think is so incredibly important is really taking time to figure out what your goals are. I think it can get really loud on social media. Even with people that you really love to follow. Like there are people that I love to follow it, but then I find myself like doubting myself because of how great and amazing they are. And so there have been times when I've had to like disconnect from social media, even people that I love and love to follow because of the way it makes me feel and the place that it keeps me stuck. And so I've had to do that. So I think it's so important to get clear on your goals and the reason you have those goals. And I think that kind of refocuses you and helps you then to set up a plan for you, as opposed to just like hopping on, seeing what everybody else is doing, and then feeling like you should be doing this or have to be doing this. Because a lot of the times burnout happens because of everything we feel like we should be doing, because of what we see on social media. So I think kind of backing up, disconnecting for a bit, getting clear on your own goals. And then of course, burnout for salon owners happens so much because you are wearing 100 different hats. Like you are the salon owner, you're running the business. A lot of the times you're the cleaner and you're doing a lot of different things like that. You might have a team, and then of course you're working behind the chair with clients. So I think time management is really huge, like getting clear on the plan, coming up with a schedule that empowers you instead of depletes you. Time management is huge. And then as far as comparison is concerned, I think that self-doubt is one of the hardest things. Like for me, I've struggled with that, like self-doubt and just being confident and always comparing. And one of the, I mean, I shared with you just disconnecting a little bit has been helpful, but then also just taking action in the areas that I want to take action in and only comparing it to myself. So my only goal, and I'm saying this as if I do it all the time. I don't, but I try and stay in my own lane so that I'm really only comparing myself to where I was like a year ago or 6 months ago or a week ago or even yesterday. Like, where was I yesterday? Where am I going now? And just kind of staying in competition with myself. And oftentimes, what I find when I am in that mode is that I'm like, actually passing people up because I'm only focusing on my stuff. And it's not about competition, like, oh, I'm better than you. It's about alignment and feeling really good about where you're going. So I would say that those are some of the things: time management, having your goals set out, really understanding and kind of staying in your own lane would be probably my biggest recommendations for stylists and owners. So,
Mhm.
how about you?
I'll just add a little bit to that. So speaking to like the individual hairstylist, I think one of the biggest challenges is for us to understand that we are all in this together, right? And also that there's enough clients for everybody out there.
Mhm.
I feel like we get caught up in this like, these are my clients, these are my people, like these clients are like your property, and they're not, first of all. But to then like, see another stylist doing something similar to you and like you being afraid they're gonna like take your clients or something. I feel like I learned very early in my career that, we can all support each other, right? Like I like having a system where there's like stylists that I know that can offer similar things to what I offer or used to offer because I'm not behind the chair anymore. Like, hey, I can't get Susie in, but I know that Jen down the street does an awesome job. So I'm going to call up Jen and see if she can fit Susie in, and I'm going to feel great about it. And if Susie decides to go to Jen, that's fine. Like if she continues to go to Jen, that's fine. Susie didn't lose respect for me as a hairstylist, right? And all I did was help support my community. But maybe she'll come back to me after too, right? And so I think just like understanding that again, your community is so important, but how to utilize that community, and instead of comparing yourself and competing with everybody, understanding you are valuable. You have something to offer, but it's okay to lean on people in your community too. So
Mhm.
it just makes everyone happy, you know?
Totally. Something that was really helpful for me, and this is like, so I've had seasons where I have been very competitive, and it's usually when I was in the most self-doubt. Like I was experiencing the most self-doubt. And so I was very competitive and like always comparing. And so if you're in that place, just like recognize and notice that you're in that place because it's not a good place. At least for me, like I found myself just always being in competition, and I don't like that feeling. Like I just would always be like looking at what other salons were doing, and I would have to. But something that someone shared with me that was helpful during that season when I was like kind of jealous and competitive, was someone said, why don't you figure out the population of your town, figure out the population of like the community you live in, the town you live in, the city you live in, and figure out roughly how many hairstylists are in your vicinity, and divide that by the amount of people by the stylist. Like even if you worked 60 hours a week and were booked every single hour, you would still not be like, there would still not be enough hairstylists for all of the people in your community. And so when I started thinking of it like that, like I'm like, oh my God, well, if I did want everybody to myself, I'd have to work like 75 hours a week. And I don't want to do that. So like maybe I am okay just being, so it's just like that shift, and that when I was in that place of neediness and desperation, that was helpful for me because it put things into perspective. Like there's plenty of clients for everybody. And when you can find yourself being in a place of more like what you were talking about, just openness and sharing and not being like desperate or needy for clients, you'll find that you'll actually attract people more easily. People will show up in your book. You'll just start building. So just focus on your craft, focus on doing what you love, focus on serving your current clients. And what you'll find is more clients will just come to you, like
Right.
just do the work. But I don't
It's
know if
kind of
that's
like
helpful for but
it's like in relationships, right? Like they always say like love will come, when you're not looking for it or whatever, right? Like if
right.
you're out there desperately trying to find it, you're never going to find it, right? But if you're
Yeah.
just being your best authentic self
Yeah.
and, appreciating those who are in your life, you're probably going to attract someone good for you.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's like so true. It really is. It's not what you want to hear in that moment, but when you start really embodying that, it
Hmm.
is true for sure.
I think
So that
too.
is all the questions I had on my end, but I do have a question for you just from me.
Yeah.
But were you going to say something?
Oh, I lost it.
Oh my God, I'm
That's okay.
sorry.
If it comes back, I'll blurt it out.
Okay. So one thing that like because for those of you who are listening, like Crystal and I don't, I mean, we've chatted briefly like one
Yeah.
other time, but we don't know each other really well. So we're getting to know each other. But I remember just coming across your content, however, social media, and just being so like immediately I was attracted to you because of your humor. Like I was like, oh my God, this girl's hilarious. I get so for you, I guess my question is one, how did you come up with like your alter ego? I don't know what you are, like Crystal 2. What
Crystal.
Crystal? Oh my God, that's hilarious. I'll have to tell you a story about that too afterwards. But
Okay.
so you have this alter ego,
Yes.
and then you share like kind of like the opposite point of view, kind of like spoofs.
Hmm.
Do you find it challenging to say some of the things that you say? Because some of the things you say are like it might trigger like a hairstylist and stuff. So how did you come up with that alter ego? And then also like how do you push through like talking about challenging topics that might be
Yeah. Ooh,
confrontive?
I like it. Put me on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so backstory on me. I lead my life with humor, right? Like if I'm nervous, I get awkward and funny. If I'm upset, I mask it with humor. Humor is just a big part of who I am. And as a hairstylist behind the chair, I started my career out as like the joke girl in beauty school. My beauty school helped serve a retirement community. And so they would come in by the busload, and we had we called them the blue haired ladies, right? And so I had my regulars that would come every week, and I had like 7 of them, and they're just like, all right, girl, what's the jokes this week? Like I had to have them ready to fire. And they were always like, pretty G-rated, but that's just like my shtick, right? Like I love it. I laugh a lot. My husband and I are like the biggest jokesters in the world, and so I've always led my career by being funny, right? I feel like I'm a little bit of an entertainer when it comes to standing behind the chair, and
Yeah.
so I had a hard time developing that with social media. So I mentioned earlier, I was like super awkward when I started making these online courses. And it was because I went into it with this idea that I had to be like professional, Crystal, and people had to take me seriously. And so I would like have things I wanted to say, and I would try to say it a certain way. And I was like super robotic and awkward. And I finally had to just be like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I just needed be me, okay?
Yeah.
And then it took me a while to get comfortable to be that person on social media too. But once I did, I feel like literally I had people messaging me all the time, like that I didn't know, that are just like, you're so funny, but I actually learned something too. And so I was like, well, cool. So I guess I can kind of like, I can lead with humor, but still be helpful, right?
Mhm.
And all the while, I am just constantly market researching and consuming other people's stuff. And I feel like I see so much bad advice out there,
Mhm.
ill intentioned or not. I feel like these people are just giving terrible advice. And so I actually have a file on my Instagram of, how you can like save posts and put them into different
Yeah.
categories. I
Yeah.
have one called disagree. And
Yeah.
so like when I come across stuff that makes me kind of like "Bleh," or like eye roll, I just like save it in there. And so literally I woke up one day cuz I was like, how am I going to share about this stuff that's like wrong with our industry and like the bad advice that people are giving. I literally woke up one morning and I was like, I need an alter ego.
I
That's what
love
it
it.
is. I need a way to like be funny, but also get the point across, right? And so I went into like full production mode and I was doing my hair, putting in these extensions, doing makeup, and my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm getting into character, man. Like you got to leave." And
Oh
I
my
I
God.
just like spent a whole day. I was like riffing, just like I didn't look at any notes, I didn't do anything. I was just like turn on the camera and go. And I had to keep pausing because I was like busting up laughing so hard. And the first one that I posted, I didn't like make any sort of like disclaimer or anything on it, and I posted it, and I had a ton of people unfollow me, and a couple people messaged me like,
You're like,
"Damn."
oh shit.
And then my husband was like, I think it's too good. Like, you're too in character right now. People don't know that this is like fake. They think you're actually this person. And so I was like, oh, shoot. So now when I post it, it's like, warning, bad advice coming at you from baddie Cristal. Um, and I notice every time I do post something with Cristal, I will get a bunch of people that unfollow me. And I think it's because it's triggering for them. But then I get a bunch that follow me that are just like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for saying something about this. And so I don't think I'll quit. I need to like have another Cristal day because there's a lot
Jeez,
of
so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna interview Cristal for
oh
my
my
we're
god.
doing an interview podcast with Cristal. We'll set it up after this, and you guys aren't gonna want to miss this. It's gonna be
Oh my
great. So we're
god.
gonna do that. This is hilarious.
Yes.
That's okay. I love it so much, and that's why, because you attract your tribe. Humor for me, I love funny people. Like I love laughing. I myself am not very like quirky and funny, but I love funny people. And so when I came across, I was like, this is hilarious. This girl is so funny. And you're right. I think I resonated so deeply with what you were sharing because you and I share a lot of the same views. So what's cool about what you do is that um I forget someone said this, but like you take what you talk about is very serious. Like it's a serious topic, but you just don't take yourself very seriously. And to
Yes.
your point too about I love that you have people that unfollow you. The only reason someone would unfollow you, this is like, is because they see something that yes, like it triggers something in them. They wouldn't even be they would just kind of like scroll through it if it didn't trigger them. But it's something either they're doing or that they don't have or something that's triggering it. And so
Right.
yeah, it's like you said, it detracts the people that you don't want following you. Hopefully they take it and learn from it. You're going to attract
Yes.
the people who really do love it and are going to listen and be like, oh, I'm doing that. Maybe I should shift the way I do. So I love it. And
Right.
I just want to share. So I also have an alter ego. I love this topic of alter ego because mine's different than yours. First of all, Beyonce also has an alter ego, Sasha Fierce. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Right.
She had an entire album about it. And that's kind of how I got mine. So for me as a salon owner, once I really started building my team a lot and had to step into my role of like CEO and really leading these people, I had so much self-doubt. Like, am I good enough? Do I have like, am I able to do this? So I was struggling big time. And I had to step into like, I knew within me there were that I could do it, that I had leadership qualities and that I knew what I was talking about and that I could inspire and impact my team. But I just wasn't there yet. I was like learning right on the job. And so I had an alter ego that I would step into before like team meetings or before having challenging conversation with a team member. And so my name's Kristen. My alter ego is Christiana. So like I would have to step into, I'm like, all right, I'm Christiana today. Like Christiana doesn't take any shit. Like she is confident, she is bold. Like, so I would literally go into work and be like, Christiana today. Like, so
Mm.
mine was more around like, I knew those qualities were in me, and Christiana was the alter ego I had that pulled them out of me. And so it was just like it was more of a way of getting out of self-doubt and into confidence. So I think the idea of alter egos is so awesome. And for you, it's like you've had experiences with stylists that are giving bad advice out there. I mean,
Yeah.
take it or leave it. But like, I love this alter ego thing where you can like really go out there and personify this. Like, so funny. I love it.
I feel like Cristal and Christiana need to have like a badass bitch conversation.
Yes, 100%. This will be like amazing for sure. Maybe that will be our live.
That'd be
People will be very
hilarious.
confused. They'll be like, what is going on here?
I'm pretty sure I could stay in character too. Like I'm after I had that whole day of shooting, I like had it down pretty good, but at first I was just like like just cracking up
Like I could
constantly.
see you. Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
you doing that at home by yourself and your husband being like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, he's like full on I have to leave the house. Like I can't be here right now. And then I had my lips like really overlined and huge too. And later he was like, "Can you just take that off? Like I can't even look at you."
Down a little bit. Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I'll
this
see if
was
I can
so
keep
much
in
fun.
character for you. Yeah, no, this is great. This is super fun.
So much fun. Well, I hope everybody got something from this. My community, I will absolutely share Crystal's information. Please go over and follow her. And then, I'm sure you'll be putting my contact info as well. So,
Yes.
and keep
Yep,
an
yep.
eye out for our podcast episode with our alter egos.
Yes, I think that is probably a must at this point. Wait, does Christiana have a look too? Like, is she like?
She doesn't, but now now that you have a look, I'm rethinking this. I think I might have to give her a look. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Come with a little attitude, maybe.
Yeah, seal
Mm-hmm.
the deal there. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to. Let's come up with a day. I mean, if you can do it, I can do it. I'm willing to try to go live in character and have a day talking about important, boss bitch stuff.
Yes. I love it so much. I love it. We'll definitely do it. Well, thank you guys so much for listening today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. This has been an absolute pleasure. And catch us on our live.
Yes.
Okay,
All
bye.
right. Cool. Bye.
All right, friend. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Your Hair Mentor podcast. It has been my pleasure to be here as your host. Again, my name is Crystal Green. And until next time, my friend, as I always love to say, have a wonderful hair day, and I'll see you then. Okay, bye.